Once upon a time, there was a boy in Karachi who loved to draw, play the piano, and make overly ambitious plans. And every day he filled sketchbooks with drawings and movie ideas, composed orchestral music nobody asked for, and quietly plotted how to make a hand-drawn animated film in a country with no animation industry. One day he somehow ended up on the TED stage talking and performing like he knew what he was doing. Because of that, he found himself surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds in the world, which naturally made him think, sure, I can make my own animation studio from scratch in a country with no infrastructure for animation. And because of that, he decided to chase a childhood dream and began creating The Glass Worker, a hand-drawn animated feature that he storyboarded, animated on, co-composed, and stubbornly brought to life over the next several years. Until finally, after many sleepless nights, The Glass Worker premiered at Annecy and became Pakistan's official Oscar submission. And ever since that day, he's been trying very hard to keep telling stories, stay out of trouble, and remember to sleep occasionally.
Welcome to A Life Worth Working, a podcast about how we get to the soul of work.
We're your hosts, Michelle Weiss and Dana Ellen Walsh. I'm a writer on the future of education and work, and Dana is the senior pastor of a progressive church.
And as always, we love hearing your comments, questions, and thoughts. So please know you can email us anytime at hello@alifeworthworking.com.
Please make sure you subscribe to our show, give it all the stars, and share it with your friends and loved ones who may be searching for more meaning in their work lives.
In this episode, we chat with Usman Riaz, TED Fellow and founder of Mono Studios, the first hand-drawn animation studio in Pakistan. Usman was raised in a very artistic family where his appreciation for visual and musical expression was fostered from an early age.
My earliest memory was when I realized, I can make things myself, was of course when I started drawing. I don't remember exactly what age I started drawing, but I distinctly remember being 5 years old and drawing a lot and copying cartoon characters and comic book characters, and obviously not very well because I was 5, but just enjoying the process so much and then coming up with my own variations on those characters. That was a moment which I distinctly remember just spending hours with sheets of paper on the ground, color pencils and pencils, drawing and coloring, just making things. I found a lot of joy in just making things. And then I started playing classical piano, and that was a much more regimented approach to playing somebody else's compositions, because classical music, it's very repertoire heavy. So you learn your Bach, your Mozart, Beethoven. Eventually I went on to Chopin and Liszt and loved playing those pieces, but it was a much more restricted environment. I felt freer drawing. And when I was 15, I picked up guitar, and guitar allowed me to shed the musical upbringing that I had and just be free with the instrument, because it was an entirely new instrument and I could play it however I wanted. And I started playing the guitar like a piano. I would play the notes on the neck from above the neck and play percussion on the guitar. And YouTube was coming up at the time. A lot of percussive guitarists were uploading their videos, so I was learning from that. And then I applied that musical freedom back to the piano and began writing my own piano compositions and orchestral compositions, because my teacher taught me how to read and write music. So I had an understanding of that. And that's when I started feeling the same freeing feeling when I was drawing in music as well. And then music started taking off, and I was selected for TED, where I went and performed with the pioneer of percussive guitar. His name is Preston Reed. It was a huge honor meeting him. That was a very big moment for me, because I was like, the things I'm doing are leading somewhere. And then to link it back to the story I told in the beginning, when I saw all these incredible people pursuing what we would perceive to be absolutely difficult, insane things to do on the TED stage, that's when I got some understanding that, okay, if they can do these things, I can do animation. It doesn't seem that difficult doing it in Pakistan. The exact moment was Elon Musk was on stage with Chris Anderson in 2012. This is when he was an inspiring figure. This was a
Yeah.
long time ago. But he was talking about SpaceX, Hyperloop and SpaceX. And I remember going, oh, he's building rockets and sending them into space. I can do animation on Earth. Suddenly it didn't seem that scary. So I'm very, very grateful to especially the TED environment because I was so young and I was around so many amazing people who just had such stubborn, obsessive belief in what they were doing that it was infectious. Being in that environment, it was infectious, and I'm very grateful that I was selected to attend the conference multiple times after that and just see what all of these pioneers and innovators are doing and say, I can try to do that too. Not thinking it would take 10 years. Again, I would do it very differently, but it certainly was a moment that made me go, I should pursue this.
For over 10 years, Usman Riaz has dedicated himself to building a hand-drawn animation studio, the first of its kind in Pakistan. There were actually very few animation artists in the entire country, so Usman pulled in a lot of talented illustrators, painters, and conceptual artists with strong fundamentals and taught them how to animate in his particular style. Slowly and steadily, he brought this dream to life, creating his own hand-drawn animated feature film called The Glassworker. You talk about this as a decade-long project, and it sounds like it was a slog at times, just really inordinately difficult. And thankfully, it came out beautifully and with to great acclaim. I'm sure there were certain parts of that process where you got certain affirmation or signals that you were onto something. But I'm curious, as you were just slogging your way through those 10 years, did you ever get sick of it? Did you ever wish someone would make it easier? Did you ever want an out at any point in time?
I think I was documenting the entire process of making this film. There was a lot of enthusiasm early on because I started officially when I was 22, 23 years old. There was a lot of joy and excitement around what I was trying to do. And even the people who I was working with, I thought it would take 6 years at the most. Being a student of how these movies are made, how hand-drawn animation is done, usually it takes 4 to 5 years. I thought, okay, we're doing it for the first time. Maybe it'll take 6 years. In the eighth year, I was wondering, what am I doing with my life? Because it was just so difficult. And the end was nowhere near in sight 8 years in, and I was collecting terabytes of footage over the last 8 years, documenting every single thing, saying, I'm going to make a documentary eventually. I'm going to show people what we did. But in the eighth year, it was starting to dawn on me just how difficult this entire process was going to be. I never thought of giving up, but I certainly thought, why isn't it easier? I've seen so many people do so many amazing things, as I alluded to earlier. Like when I went for TED, I saw people pursuing so many incredible things. I'm not even doing something incredible. I just wanted to make a movie, a hand-drawn animated film. I'm not looking to change the world the way the people who I looked up to were trying to do. So why is this particular thing so difficult? I certainly had those questions. And I think the enthusiasm that I started off with, that I want to eventually build an industry in Pakistan and actually have hand-drawn animation in movies like this be made and for us to be the pioneers of it. But I think it began to dawn on me that there are a number of factors that go into creating an industry, not just enthusiasm. You need financing as well. And I can only finance my project or raise the financing for my project. I won't be able to do it for everybody. So there was a lot of things that I realized and some perspective that I gained along the way. Never thought of giving up, but certainly had questions as to why this is so difficult.
I'm so glad you were able to harness that grit and perseverance. But it is incredible staying motivated over a decade's worth of work against some real obstacles. I'm curious, Usman, if you could explain to us and our listeners a little bit more about what a hand-drawn featured film involves.
Well, thank you so much, first of all. A lot of people have asked me, how did you sustain the enthusiasm for 10 years? And the honest answer is it was more stubbornness than enthusiasm. I was like, we have to get this done. I've decided to do this. We have to get it done. And again, I couldn't have done it without all the remarkable people who I worked with who also were dealing with the same things, which is why is this taking so long? And this is so difficult, particularly in hand-drawn animation. Every single thing that you see on screen, whether it's the background or character movement or even a leaf blowing in the wind, that's all drawn by hand. With all of the things happening with generative AI now, I'm curious as to what the process would have been like if I started on it right now. But in 2013, 2014, this wasn't even a thought. You just had to sit there and draw everything. And the films that I grew up watching, particularly the early works of Walt Disney, so Snow White, Pinocchio, Bambi, all those films were drawn by hand. Every background was painted by hand. And they have some of the most beautiful character animation that you will ever see. The other source of inspiration, which I would say is my biggest source of inspiration, would be Studio Ghibli's movies, Hayao Miyazaki, Isao Takahata. Both animation styles are different. The way that the characters are animated, the Disney favors fluidity of movement more than I would say the drawings themselves. The Japanese focus more on much more stronger poses and the drawings leading into the poses, but the fundamentals are the same. Every single frame is drawn by hand. And for some perspective, movies are generally shot at 24 frames per second, but you have a camera and you film multiple takes. And then in the edit, you sit down and you actually select the best takes and piece together your movie. In animation, you don't have that luxury. So you have every single thing that you see on screen is drawn by hand. So the animator is essentially the actor. The director guides the direction for the acting. And in my case, I storyboarded the whole film. So I came up with the blueprint for the movie that the artists referred to when they were animating the characters or when the backgrounds were being painted. But you don't have multiple takes to work with. You have exactly what you're drawing. The amount of drawings that you will make will equate to 3, 4 seconds of footage, and then that's the shot. Then you move on to the next one. So it's very labor intensive. And I like to think of myself as a craftsman as well as a storyteller. The nuance in the drawings. And again, I worked with a brilliant team of people who helped realize most of the drawings, but I did the foundational work in the storyboard. And I would say whenever I could either animate myself or fix shots that I wanted to look a certain way, I certainly had my hand in that. But in the 98 minutes of the movie that people will see, every single thing was drawn and painted by hand.
Amazing.
It
Wow.
is amazing.
I love that you had these innate gifts and passions, but how hard you worked on them. And then surrounding yourself through TED with people who are really talented just expanded your sense of possibility. I'm curious, Usman, about your sense of call or purpose. Do you feel like that's been something you've discovered in life or something that you were born with?
I think about that a lot, like what motivates me, because near the completion of the film, I was having a discussion with my wife and my cousin, who are again part of the project with me. We were discussing what motivates us, and I was saying I just find tremendous joy in making things, in figuring things out. I mean, yes, I've done art and created things around those passions, drawing and music and storytelling for most of my life, but I never thought of it as work. And I'm very grateful that in Pakistan, normally people don't get to pursue things like this just because of the state of the country and everyone wants stability for their children. My family very much supported me throughout this whole thing and never discouraged me. So I have the luxury to be able to think along the lines of I enjoy making things and find joy in that. So I would say my calling is just the finding the joy in creation and bringing my imagination to life. I mean, when I was younger, I was certainly much more I wouldn't say I'm not ambitious now, but I definitely felt this urge to assert that I can make things and I can do it this way. And if you don't believe that I can do it, I will show you it can be done. But throughout this journey, I think that was ironed out of me because I think it humbled me a lot. I never had a huge ego, but the journey certainly made me reflect on that maybe I did. And I think now I just find the joy in creation.
Mm. It's amazing that you still find the joy in it. It's incredible that you persisted through that difficult process. There's so much stubbornness in your story. And then there's also, as you've mentioned, the joy you find in creating this. And as I was watching your work and your documentary and the beautiful drawings, even though there's a lot of kind of wartime depiction and challenges depicted, there's really this kind of wonderland quality that you've created through the visuals and as well as the music. And I am curious what role wonder and curiosity have played in your life.
I think in the medium of film, it has to transport you to a place that you don't normally get to see. There are a number of movies that, of course, depict a very real human experience and are very realistic and gritty. And I love those movies. But the kind of movie that I wanted to make was with a sense of wonder and delight, especially with the animated films I talked about earlier. Most of Hayao Miyazaki's work does that. The early hand-drawn Disney films did that. So I wanted to try and capture some of that magic in this film. I would say to the team, if we can do 0.1% of what the films that I grew up watching did for me, if we can try to capture just a little bit of that magic, we would have done something good. That was a motivation to create with this film and let the viewer experience that for sure. I've always looked at the world or tried to look at the world through the eyes of a child, the way I grew up looking at it, where everything is new, everything is amazing. I think hanging on to that feeling is important because we tend to see the world for what it is. There's this interview that Steve Jobs did where he said that he was describing the world and he said, all these things that we call life, the world that we have around us, all these rules, they were made up by people no smarter than you. And if you poke life, you'll tend to find that something pokes out the other end. And I've always loved that quote because everyone told me making this film was impossible early on. And I think maintaining that childlike optimism, especially a lot of stubbornness, but also that childlike optimism was important. That just because you're saying it can't be done doesn't mean it's true. So we'll see who's right. And I will say again, in the eighth year, I thought all the people who said it's impossible were right. But I kept going, saying we're almost there. We will find out whether it's possible or not.
Usman, I'm curious about what kind of scaffolding of support you've had in your life to get you to be able to this moment and to all that you've accomplished.
It always goes back to my parents at the end of the day. As I said earlier, they never discouraged me. My father tended to let me be and explore things the way I wanted to explore them. He never hovered over me saying you're doing it wrong. My mother never hovered over me and said you're not doing this correctly. Even though, especially my father who has so much knowledge in the arts, he just let me be. And I think that was important for me to just find my own or get lost in my imagination, get lost in experimenting and figuring things out. My fondest childhood memories are when I'm on my own, either figuring out a piece of music or drawing or playing in the garden, letting my imagination run wild. So I was able to find comfort in that and moving forward then. And I would also say my grandmother, my father's mother, she would tell me stories all the time or show me films. Both her and my father consistently showed me wonderful works of art, movies, animation. And then through my mother, her sister would live in London, and I would always be in London every summer, visiting museums, seeing works of art, and just thinking differently. I mean, the word now would be lateral thinking, but back then I didn't know what that was. But they always got me to look at things differently, and I don't even think they knew that they were kind of preparing me for the challenges that would come ahead. But it really helped just having that way of looking at the world when everyone says, this is the way things are, I was able to be like, why? Why can it not be like this? And I can show you that it can be like this. Obviously, people would laugh at me when I was younger, but now I proved that making a film like this is possible. And we'll see whoever that inspires, whether that's in Pakistan or somewhere else, to pursue their thing. It doesn't have to be making movies. They can, again, the way I saw the rockets in space, and gave me perspective to doing animation on Earth. Somebody else might find this, look at it completely differently, and find the inspiration to pursue their dream. But I would say the support that I've gotten, I'm looking back now, I'm just extremely grateful for everything my family did and didn't do for me, which is they never got in my way.
What strikes me most about Usman's story is this beautiful paradox. He spent 10 years creating something that brought him tremendous joy, but he tortured himself with worry and stress the entire time. And then he realized the work would have been just as good without all that suffering.
That's such a profound lesson about the difference between working hard and worrying hard. Usman learned that stress doesn't actually improve the outcome. It just makes the journey more miserable. And now he's trying to surrender to the process while still putting in the effort.
And there's something so powerful about being surrounded by people who are pursuing seemingly impossible dreams. Sometimes we need to witness other people's audacious visions to expand our own sense of what's possible.
Usman found that inspiration at TED, and it can happen anywhere, in a coffee shop, at a conference, even in a conversation like this one.
What an absolute delight to have Usman Riaz on this episode of A Life Worth Working. She's Michelle Weiss.
And she's Dana Allen Walsh.
Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and loved ones who may also be searching for purpose and meaning in their work lives, or what we call the soul of work.